Happens. There is a common assumption about people who enjoy being alone. We look at someone who turns down invitations, spends weekends by themselves, or disappears after a long social gathering. Happens. And we immediately call them introverted. We assume they were simply born quieter, more private, and less interested in human connection. But for many people, the truth is far more complicated. Happens. They were not born wanting to distance themselves from the world. They learned to feel safe there. At some point in their past, being close to other people became connected with uncertainty. Happens. Perhaps the people they trusted were warm and loving one day, then distant and impatient the next. Perhaps they opened up about something painful only to be ignored, criticized. Happens. Or told they were being too sensitive. Perhaps they reached out for comfort and discovered that no one was emotionally available enough to meet them. These moments may have looked small from the outside. Happens. But inside the mind of a child, they carried a powerful message. Connection is not always safe. When this happens repeatedly, the brain begins to adapt. It stops expecting comfort from other people and starts searching for safety somewhere else. Happens. Slowly, solitude becomes that place. When you are alone, no one suddenly changes their mood. No one misunderstands your silence. No one asks you to explain feelings that you do not yet know how to describe. Happens. No one promises to stay and then disappears. The quiet may feel empty to someone else, but to you it feels predictable. And predictability can feel very similar to safety. This is why some people do not withdraw because they dislike others. Happens. In fact, many of them care deeply. They may be thoughtful friends, attentive listeners, and highly compassionate people. But underneath that kindness is often a nervous system that does not completely trust closeness. Happens. They can enjoy a conversation and still feel the need to escape afterward. They can love someone and still keep part of themselves hidden. They can want connection while simultaneously preparing for disappointment. Happens. From the outside, this behavior can look cold, distant, or difficult to understand. People may say you are too guarded or you never let anyone get close. But what others call a wall may actually be armor. Happens. It was built slowly, through experiences that taught you that being emotionally exposed could lead to rejection, embarrassment, or pain. The distance is not there because you believe you are better than everyone else. Happens. It is there because some part of you still believes that safety depends on needing as little as possible from other people. And being alone gives you something that relationships have not always been able to provide. Happens. You control the atmosphere, the noise, the expectations, and the amount of yourself you have to reveal. You do not have to monitor another person's mood or wonder whether you have said the wrong thing. Happens. You do not have to perform happiness when you are exhausted. In solitude, your body can finally stop preparing for a reaction. That does not mean there is something wrong with you. Happens. It means your mind found a way to protect you. Choosing distance may once have been the smartest response available. It helped you avoid disappointment, preserve your energy. Happens. And create a private world where no one could suddenly take away your sense of stability. But there is an important difference between enjoying solitude and depending on it for protection. Happens. Solitude can be peaceful, healing, and deeply meaningful. Yet when being alone becomes the only place where you feel safe, it may no longer be just a preference. It may be an old survival pattern still operating in the present. Happens. So perhaps the real question is not, why do I like being alone? The deeper question is, what does being alone protect me from? Because sometimes the person everyone calls distant is not trying to push the world away. Happens. They are simply protecting the part of themselves that once reached out and learned that no one was there. Happens. And once we begin asking what solitude is protecting someone from, we often arrive at one of the deepest roots of the pattern, an unsafe emotional childhood. For a child, trust is not built through words. Happens. It is built through repetition. When a child feels afraid, hurt, confused, or overwhelmed, they naturally look toward the adults around them. If those adults respond with warmth, happens. Patience and consistency. The child slowly learns that people can be trusted. They begin to believe that it is safe to ask for comfort, safe to express emotion, and safe to depend on someone when life becomes too difficult. Happens. But not every child receives that kind of stability. Some children grow up with parents who are loving one moment and emotionally distant the next. On one day, the parent may laugh. Happens. Listen and offer affection. On another day, the same parent may become irritated, cold, dismissive, or completely unavailable. The child never knows which version of the adult will appear. Happens. A small mistake may be forgiven today and punished harshly tomorrow. A question may receive a gentle answer one evening and an angry reaction the next morning. A request for comfort may bring a hug once. Happens. But later be met with silence, criticism, or the accusation that the child is being too sensitive. To an adult, these changing reactions may seem temporary or insignificant, but to a child, happens. They create a world that feels emotionally unpredictable. The child cannot relax because love no longer feels stable. It begins to feel like something that can disappear without warning. Happens. So the child becomes observant. They learn to study faces before speaking. They listen carefully to footsteps in the hallway. They notice the way a door closes, the speed of someone's movements. Happens. The tension in a voice or the silence at the dinner table. Before asking for anything, they first try to determine whether the adult is in a safe mood. This is not ordinary awareness. Happens. It is emotional surveillance. The child is no longer simply living inside the home. They are constantly collecting information so they can avoid triggering anger, rejection, or withdrawal. Happens. Their attention moves away from their own feelings and toward the emotional state of everyone around them. Over time, this creates insecure attachment. The child may still love their parents deeply. Happens. But they no longer feel completely safe depending on them. They begin to associate closeness with uncertainty. Part of them wants comfort, while another part prepares to be disappointed. Happens. At the same time, another quieter wound may begin to form. Emotional neglect. Emotional neglect does not always look dramatic. There may be no shouting, no obvious cruelty, and no visible abuse. Happens. The family may provide food, clothing, education, and a comfortable home. From the outside, everything may appear normal, but inside the child's emotional world, something essential is missing. Happens. When the child is sad, no one asks what happened. When they are afraid, they are told there is nothing to be afraid of. When they are angry, they are punished for their attitude instead of being helped to understand the feeling. Happens. When they try to explain their pain, the adults quickly change the subject or tell them to stop overreacting. The child's emotions are real, but no one treats them as meaningful. Happens. Eventually, the child learns that expressing feelings does not lead to comfort. It leads to dismissal, embarrassment, or inconvenience, so they stop showing what is happening inside. Happens. They cry quietly, they solve problems alone, they hide disappointment, they stop asking others to understand, and whenever someone notices that something is wrong, they automatically say, happens. I am fine. That sentence becomes more than a habit, it becomes a shield. I am fine means I do not expect you to understand. I am fine means I have already learned how to carry this alone. Happens. I'm fine means it feels safer to hide my pain than to risk having it ignored again. As this child grows into an adult, the pattern may become almost invisible. They can communicate well. Happens. Make friends, succeed at work, and appear calm in social situations. They may even become the person everyone else turns to for support, but when they are the one who is hurting, happens. They pull away. They do not send the message. They do not make the call. They do not say, I need someone. Instead, they close the door, replay the situation in their mind, and search for a solution by themselves. Happens. Even in close relationships, they maintain an invisible distance. They may share facts without sharing vulnerability. They may speak about what happened without revealing how deeply it affected them. Happens. They may allow others to stand nearby while keeping the most fragile parts of themselves out of reach. This distance is not a lack of love. It is a learned form of caution. Happens. Somewhere inside them is still the child who does not know which response will come back. Comfort or criticism, warmth or silence, understanding or dismissal, so they reduce the risk by reducing the need. Happens. They tell themselves they can handle everything alone, and most of the time they do. But being capable of carrying pain alone does not mean they were meant to carry it alone. Happens. The truth is that their independence may have begun as protection, not preference. Their silence may have begun when speaking no longer felt useful. Happens. And the invisible distance they keep today may be the space they once needed to survive an emotionally unpredictable home. Happens. And for some children, that silence does not only teach them to hide their emotions, it teaches them something even more demanding. They must grow up before they are ready. These are the children who are often described as unusually mature. Happens. They know how to stay quiet when adults are stressed. They notice when money is tight, when a parent is exhausted, or when conflict is about to begin. They learn to take care of younger siblings. Happens. Complete responsibilities without being reminded. And solve problems that should never have belonged to them in the first place. Sometimes, no one directly tells them to become the adult in the room. Happens. The role is simply handed to them through circumstance. Maybe a parent is constantly working and has little time or energy left. Maybe one caregiver is emotionally unstable and needs the child to remain calm. Happens. Maybe the family is struggling financially, living through illness, separation, addiction, or constant conflict. In that environment, the child begins to understand that there is no space for their needs. Happens. So they adapt. They make their own food. They help a younger sibling with homework. They clean the house before anyone asks. They learn how to calm themselves after crying because no one is available to comfort them. Happens. They listen to adult problems they are too young to understand, then try to say the right thing to make the parent feel better. Instead of being protected, they become the protector. Happens. Instead of being comforted, they become the comforter. Instead of being allowed to make mistakes, they become careful, responsible, and useful. From the outside, this child may appear impressive. Happens. Adults may praise them and say, you are so mature for your age. They may tell other people, this child never causes trouble, or we never have to worry about them. And the child may feel proud when hearing those words. Happens. Praise feels like love. Being useful feels like belonging. So they begin to build their identity around being the one who needs nothing, but hidden beneath that praise is a dangerous lesson. Happens. My value comes from making life easier for other people. I am lovable when I am helpful. I am good when I do not become a burden. I am not allowed to need too much. This is how early maturity can become a trap. Happens. The child learns that asking for help may create more stress for the family. Crying may make a tired parent more frustrated. Making a mistake may become another problem someone else has to solve. Happens. So the child tries to remove their needs from the room. They become quiet when they are overwhelmed. They hide sickness until it becomes impossible to ignore. They apologize for needing attention. Happens. They feel guilty when someone spends time, energy, or money on them. Even when they desperately want support, another voice inside says, do not make this harder for anyone. Over time. Happens. Self-reliance becomes more than a skill. It becomes as a child grows into an adult. Other people often admire how capable they are. They manage work. Happens. Money, responsibilities, and crises with remarkable control. When something goes wrong, they immediately search for a solution. They rarely panic in public. They know how to keep functioning even when they are emotionally exhausted. Happens. But there is a cost to being the person who always handles everything. When a task becomes too heavy, they do not delegate. They stay awake longer. When life becomes painful, they do not reach out. Happens. They isolate when someone offers help. Their first response may be, it's okay, I can do it. And most of the time, they truly can. But the question is not whether they are capable. Happens. The question is why receiving help feels more dangerous than exhaustion. For someone shaped by forced independence, dependence can feel like losing control. Asking for help creates the possibility of rejection. Happens. It creates the possibility that the other person will become irritated, disappear, do the task poorly, or later use that help as a reason to demand something in return. So they would rather carry too much than risk being disappointed. Happens. They would rather work until their body is tired than admit they cannot manage everything alone. They would rather solve a problem imperfectly by themselves than place their trust in someone who may not show up. Happens. This is often called hyper-independence. It looks like strength from the outside, but inside it is frequently driven by fear. It is the fear of being a burden, the fear of depending on someone who may leave. Happens. The fear of asking and hearing no. The fear that needing another person will give them the power to hurt you. This is why being alone can feel so powerful to them. When they are alone. Happens. There are no expectations to negotiate, no favors to repay, no promises to question, no uncertainty about whether someone will arrive when needed. They control the plan, the pace. Happens. And the outcome, if something goes wrong, they only have themselves to blame. And strangely, self-blame may feel safer than disappointment because at least it is predictable. Happens. Solitude becomes the place where they never have to explain why they are struggling. It is where they can finally stop being the reliable one, the mature one, the person who holds everything together. Happens. Behind the closed door, they are allowed to be tired. They are allowed to not know the answer. They are allowed to put down the responsibility that they have carried since childhood. Happens. But the tragedy is that many of them do not know how to rest without first reaching the point of collapse. They have spent so long proving that they can survive alone that they may not recognize how deeply they still wish someone would say. Happens. You do not have to do this by yourself, and healing does not mean becoming helpless or giving up the strength they worked so hard to build. Their independence is real. Their competence is real. Happens. Their ability to survive difficult situations deserves respect. The goal is not to take that strength away. The goal is to help them discover that strength and support can exist together. Happens. They can be capable and still ask for help. They can be responsible and still have needs. They can love others without always rescuing them. They can receive care without earning it through exhaustion. Happens. Because real maturity is not the ability to carry everything alone. Real maturity is knowing when something is too heavy and trusting that the right people will help you hold it. Happens. Perhaps the child who never caused trouble was never truly without needs. Perhaps they simply learned that having needs was dangerous. And perhaps the adult who insists on doing everything alone is not refusing love. Happens. They are still waiting to learn that depending on someone does not always end in disappointment. Happens. And sometimes the reason a person needs to carry everything alone is not only emotional. The pattern may also be stored inside the body. For some people, solitude becomes the place where their nervous system can finally stop working so hard. Happens. Imagine growing up in a home where silence never felt guaranteed. Perhaps the television was always too loud. Adults spoke over one another, doors slammed without warning, and arguments could begin at any moment. Happens. Perhaps the home was crowded, with no room that truly belonged to you and no private corner where you could safely disappear. Even when nobody was directly speaking to you, your body was still listening. Happens. You noticed the volume of footsteps in the hallway. You could tell who had entered the house by the way the door closed. You heard tension hidden inside an ordinary sentence. Happens. You sensed when the atmosphere had changed before anyone admitted that something was wrong. Your nervous system learned to remain prepared. It did not know whether the next sound would be harmless or whether it would signal another argument. Happens. Another emotional explosion or another moment when you needed to become invisible. So your body stayed alert. Your shoulders remained slightly tense. Your breathing became shallow. Happens. Your attention constantly searched the room for signs of danger. This state may have helped you survive that environment, but a nervous system that spends too much time preparing for danger can become deeply exhausted. Happens. And the body does not simply forget those patterns when childhood ends. As an adult, you may enter a crowded room and immediately begin processing everything at once. Several conversations. Happens. Changing facial expressions, background music, bright lights, movement, tension, and the emotional energy of the people around you. To someone else, it is just a normal social gathering. Happens. To your nervous system, it may feel like a room filled with signals that all require attention. You are not simply talking to one person. Part of you is also tracking who appears uncomfortable. Happens. Who is becoming impatient, whether someone's tone has changed, whether the group is welcoming you, and whether it is safe to relax. That amount of processing requires enormous energy. Happens. This is why a person can appear completely fine during a social event, laugh at the right moments, participate in conversations, and seem calm, but return home feeling as if they have run a marathon. Happens. This experience is sometimes described as a social hangover. It is the exhaustion that arrives after prolonged interaction, especially when the person has spent hours monitoring the environment. Happens. Adjusting their behavior, absorbing other people's emotions, or trying to remain pleasant while their nervous system becomes overloaded. And for highly sensitive people, this effect can feel even stronger. Happens. Some people naturally process sensory and emotional information more deeply. They notice small changes that others overlook. They hear the tension beneath someone's words. They sense discomfort before it is spoken. Happens. They may enter a room feeling calm and leave carrying emotions that did not originally belong to them. They are like emotional sponges. A friend shares a painful story and they continue feeling it hours later. Happens. Two people argue nearby and the tension stays inside their body long after the argument ends. Someone smiles while hiding sadness and they somehow notice both emotions at the same time. Happens. This sensitivity can make them compassionate, perceptive, and deeply understanding. But without enough recovery time, it can also become overwhelming. That is why they may suddenly disappear after spending time with others. Happens. They stop answering messages, they cancel plans, they close the bedroom door, turn off the lights, and sit in silence. From the outside, this may look antisocial, dramatic, or distant. Happens. But they are not necessarily rejecting anyone. They are trying to return to themselves. The quiet room becomes a biological charging station. Inside that room, there are no overlapping conversations to separate. Happens. No expressions to analyze, no moods to absorb, no sudden movements demanding attention. The environment finally becomes predictable enough for the body to lower its defenses. The breathing begins to slow. Happens. The muscles gradually release. The mind stops scanning. The emotional noise starts to settle. For the first time all day, their nervous system receives the message that nothing needs to be handled right now. Happens. This is why solitude can feel less like loneliness and more like medicine. It gives the person enough distance to recognize which feelings belong to them and which ones were absorbed from someone else. Happens. It allows their emotional battery to recharge and their mind to become clear again. They do not retreat because they hate society. They retreat because their inner system has reached full capacity. Happens. And when they say, I need some time alone, what they may really mean is, I need a place where my body no longer has to prepare for anything. Happens. The problem begins only when they feel ashamed of this need or when other people interpret recovery as rejection. They may force themselves to remain social long after their energy is gone. Happens. They may ignore the signals of overload because they do not want to seem rude, difficult, or overly sensitive. And then, instead of resting early, they wait until they become irritable. Happens. Emotionally numb or completely exhausted. But respecting the nervous system does not mean avoiding all connection. It means learning how to recognize capacity. Happens. It means noticing when conversation still feels nourishing and when it has become draining. It means creating boundaries before exhaustion becomes collapse. It means understanding that needing silence after connection does not make someone cold. Happens. It makes them human. A quiet room may not solve every wound from the past, but for someone whose childhood was filled with noise, tension, and constant emotional monitoring. Happens. Silence can provide something their body rarely received when they were young. Permission to stop watching, stop preparing, and finally rest. Happens. And once the nervous system has finally learned how to rest in silence, another question begins to appear. What happens when the place that once protected you becomes the only place where you allow yourself to live? Happens. Solitude may have saved you in the past. It protected you from being ignored when you tried to speak. It protected you from being misunderstood when your emotions were too complicated to explain. Happens. It protected you from the pressure of performing the perfect version of yourself so that other people would remain pleased with you. When you were alone, no one could suddenly withdraw their affection. Happens. No one could disappoint you after you had placed your trust in them. No one could hand you their emotional chaos and expect you to carry it. Solitude became a shield, and for a long time. Happens. That shield served an important purpose. It gave you control when your childhood felt unpredictable. It gave you quiet when the world around you was too loud. It gave you space when other people's expectations left no room for your real feelings. Happens. Your mind was not trying to ruin your ability to connect. It was trying to protect the parts of you that had already been hurt that deserves compassion. Happens. But every survival strategy has a cost when it continues operating long after the original danger is past. A shield is meant to be raised when danger appears. It is not meant to remain in front of you every moment of your life. Happens. Because when the shield never comes down, it slowly becomes a wall. At first, the wall keeps out criticism, rejection, disappointment, emotional pressure, and people who do not respect your boundaries. Happens. But eventually, it may also keep out patience, loyalty, understanding, kindness, and the people who genuinely want to know you. You may begin to withdraw before anyone has the chance to hurt you. Happens. A friend takes longer than usual to respond, and you immediately decide not to message again. Someone asks how you are feeling, but you give them a safe answer instead of an honest one. Happens. A relationship becomes emotionally close, and instead of feeling comfort, part of you begins searching for an exit. Nothing terrible may have happened, but your body remembers what closeness once cost you. Happens, so it reacts to the present as if it were still living in the past. This is why the most important question may not be, why do I enjoy being alone? The deeper question is, am I choosing to be alone? Happens. Or am I automatically hiding inside solitude because of an old fear? These two experiences may look identical from the outside. In both situations, you may close the door, silence your phone. Happens. Cancel plans and spend time by yourself. But inside, they feel completely different. Chosen solitude feels spacious. It gives you freedom. It helps you breathe. It allows you to think clearly. Happens. Recover your energy, reconnect with yourself, and return to the world when you are ready. You enter it consciously. You know why you need it. And when you have rested, you still feel capable of opening the door again. Happens. Automatic isolation feels different. It happens before you have truly made a decision. Someone gets too close, a conversation becomes vulnerable, or the possibility of disappointment appears. Happens. And your body immediately tells you to disappear. You may call it peace, but underneath that peace there is often tension. You may say you do not need anyone, but part of you is still watching the door. Happens. You may insist that being alone is easier, while secretly feeling hurt that nobody tries hard enough to reach you. This does not mean your love of silence is false. It means silence may be serving two different purposes at once. Happens. Sometimes it is helping you recover. At other times, it is helping you avoid being seen. Healing begins when you learn to tell the difference. Before withdrawing, you can pause and ask yourself, happens. Am I exhausted, afraid? Do I need rest or do I need reassurance? Is this person actually unsafe or does closeness simply feel unfamiliar? Am I protecting a healthy boundary? Happens. Or am I repeating an old escape? These questions are not meant to force you into connection. They are meant to return choice to you because healing does not require you to abandon solitude. Happens. You do not need to become the loudest person in the room. You do not need to fill your calendar, attend every gathering, or explain yourself to everyone. You do not need to become extroverted in order to prove that you are healthy. Happens. Your quiet nature may be one of the most beautiful parts of you. It may be where your creativity lives, where your mind becomes clear, and where your deepest understanding begins. Happens. The goal is not to destroy the shelter. The goal is to add a door that you can close when you truly need rest, a door that you can open when someone has shown patience. Happens. Consistency and care, a door that allows you to decide who enters instead of keeping everyone outside. You do not have to remove your boundaries. You simply have to make sure they are protecting your life rather than shrinking it. Happens. The right relationships will not demand that you perform. They will not punish you for needing space. They will not make your emotions feel like a burden. They will allow you to be quiet without making you disappear. Happens. They will give you room without abandoning you. They will show you that connection can be steady, gentle, and safe, and learning to trust that may take time. You may open the door only a little at first. Happens. You may share one honest feeling instead of the entire story. You may accept one small act of help without immediately trying to repay it. You may allow someone to sit beside you without asking them to solve anything. Happens. These may look like small actions, but for a nervous system trained to survive alone, they are acts of extraordinary courage. Because the final goal is not to become someone who never needs solitude. Happens. The goal is to become someone who can enjoy solitude without using it to disappear. Someone who can rest alone without believing they must suffer alone. Someone who can protect their peace without blocking every possibility of love. Happens. The shield once kept you safe, and you do not need to hate yourself for building it. But perhaps you are now strong enough to lower it when danger is no longer present. Perhaps the wall does not need to disappear completely. Happens. Perhaps it only needs a window, because when you lock every door to keep out the storms, you may also block the sunlight, and you deserve both. Happens. The silence that helps you heal, and the connection that reminds you that you no longer have to survive everything by yourself.